Welcome everyone to the Thursday, November 21st, 2024 Helm Developer Call. And let me go ahead and share the minutes in here. So we keep our meeting minutes and agenda all in a file in Google Docs, and there it is. And we'll go through the basics. We'll start with announcements, discussion, and if we have any other reviews or anything before we get to assignments. So I have one announcement, and that is a reminder that the KubeCon EU general submissions are due here shortly. I want to say it's the 24th. I could be wrong,
Sunday, yeah.
But Sunday. So if you have a talk you want to submit, you get it in now. They don't tend to push the deadlines. For anybody who's wondering, project talks like the Helm maintainer talk are in a separate submission process, separate timetable and all of that, and we'll be monitoring that. All right, so that was the announcements. Next, we can get into discussions. I don't see Nick on, but he threw some things in here he'd like to get some eyes on. Binary plugin URL support, and make the authorizer and registry authorizer configurable. Interesting. I can sign up to review these maybe this week. Right. All right. This is a different one. I thought there was another one that had to do with binary plugin URL support, but I'll take that up. I can go ahead and take a look at those. We'll have to ping some other maintainers and see if anybody else wants to pick those up. But they're both things that would be interesting to have. Does anybody have any comments or anything on them since Nick isn't here?
On the I'm looking at them now, but not off the top of my head.
Okay. Oh, it looks like the authorizer and registry authorizer has two approvals. So I think it's just a matter of order to actually get that one merged.
Okay, I'm looking at that one. Yeah.
Yeah, so it looks like you and Scott, when you approved it, you didn't merge it. And so
you're right.
Just sitting there unmerged. So now what we're gonna have to do, because the build and Golang CI, they're required, and it's been too long, so it's fallen out of GitHub Actions cache. We just need to fire that off, and there's a trick to do a force push that will fire that off with actually out making any content changes. And so I can go ahead and do that. That's easy enough.
Sure. Okay. What is your trick, by the way?
My trick, it's a stupid trick. I check out the branch. I amend it without making any changes.
That's what I do too.
And then I just force push it, and you're done. There's no content changes to it, but that's it. It's a weird, funny trick, but that will force off CI. We need a better way to cause those to kick off again, and if somebody knows how to do that with GitHub Actions, it would be wonderful.
I think you need
what we need to do there.
Approve once more. I tried that and it just invalidated my approvals before.
Yeah, it would. So somebody will need to approve it again. And if Scott or I went ahead and did it, then we could approve it and be done with it.
There was a way to rerun actions, but then you have to find the right one. So it's like, especially if they're way back, it's like not worth it.
Yeah, it's out of the cache's memory, so you can't even go back to the listing because it's too far back. Because it only keeps history for so long.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you want me to? You said you're gonna push that.
You want it?
I can do that.
I can redo it after the meeting, or you can do it. Okay.
Yeah, because I got it right.
All right, and we can move on to the next topic here. It's one I threw in, and it's one of the things. So I started to review HIPs. And look at them. And one of the things I want everybody to be thoughtful of as we write these and we review them is the user profiles, or really roles that we have involved. Helm, for quite some time, we've had these roles, and they are in priority order because we were looking at scope. So for example, those of us who build Helm, we prioritize last after everybody else. So we will do things to jump through more hoops for ourselves to make it a significantly better experience for, say, somebody who installs a chart. And so I want to think about that. A couple of the hips that I've read so far, right, with things like Helm's distribution, so many versions of Helm are in use. And we used to have metrics, but we didn't check them and they cost a lot to have. But you'd have people using, Helm 3.8 and 3.7. And so we want to make charts as widely accessible, even for them, not assuming people are on the latest version, even though for security and things like that, they probably should be. We do want to make the best experience that people can have across the board. So just assuming people are on the latest version or assuming the person installing the chart is also the person who created it are often bad assumptions. And so it's probably just a good time to review these because I know in my HIP reviews that's going to come up, and it already has come up. Right? Helm's a package manager. It's not just a dev tool for people creating charts and then putting them in. A lot of people distribute things to their customers and other things in chart form, and we need to be cognizant of them. That's it. So yeah.
Thing on the hips. I'm just looking at the hips. Should we have a label for V4 hips or something like that? Or is it enough to just prepend hip 4 or H4 hip as I'm seeing is the way?
We did not come up to a convention on those. I'll take the action to try to figure something out the next day, whether we want to put a label on it or put something in the title. I'm going to suggest we put something in the title because a label will get caught in the PRs. But if we come back to it 3 years from now and we're looking at the listing of hips, we probably want something that can be seen there.
Yeah, we talked a little about it. I definitely like the title thing.
Yeah, it's the easiest way when you're scanning the list of them to see it. If you put it in the metadata, you've got to drill in a level. If you put it as a label somewhere, that gets lost later. The easiest way is to put something in the title that signifies it, because then we can see it in scanning in every form. Okay. Evans, you wanted to talk about the process for backporting changes to V3.
Yeah, I guess the title is pretty self-explanatory. What's the process? How do things work there?
We probably should document this somewhere, but when we did this with Helm version 2, or what I've done elsewhere, and please, this is open for conversation. This isn't dictating it. Normally, you would land something in the main branch for Helm version 4. Then you would also create a pull request to land that in version 3. And that could be a cherry pick pull request if it very neatly cherry picks back, or it could be another pull request that has to make modifications because there's a deviation. But you'd get a separate pull request to land it in Helm version 3, which is on the dev v3 branch.
Cool.
A quick related question. Is API version is there a way for a chart to specify which version of, more specifically, which version of Helm or greater it requires?
So for what version of Helm it requires, yes and no. There is no way to do it in the chart.yaml file. In fact, there's a HIP that's been proposed for that, which George did, and I was reading and commenting on this morning. But there's actually a way to do it in a template. So in a template, you can, in a template, there's something called the capabilities. And in the capabilities, we'll tell you the current version of Helm that's being used against it. So you can check to see if a capability is within a version range using the semver template function. And if it's not, you can throw an error and it'll fail to render, and you can choose the message you want displayed.
Thank you.
And so it's a little bit of a hack to do that, but it is available in the capabilities to do that today for the chart.
Good to know.
On the subject of the backporting, I have been labeling some PRs that have been merged, needs V3 pick or whatever that label was. I haven't thought too much about the process of actually getting them picked back into the Dev V3 branch, but that I have been using the label at least so that they're at least tracked.
Yeah. So when it comes to picking, I've been trying to figure out the best way to do that. And it's just not an easy thing to do with just picking, because we're going to get some deviations. So we're probably just going to need pull requests rather than picking and pushing to a branch in order to make sure it passes CI on that branch. It'll be pretty easy right now in the beginning, but as time goes on, that's going to become more important. There is a pick bot we could use, but when you use the pick bots for this stuff, and I've been looking at this for our release branches, you can't use merge commits because it'll try to pick a merge commit and then we run into problems. You actually have to stop using merge commits if you want to do that. And I don't know, that's a bigger discussion. So I think we just need
Indeed.
pull requests that do it to V3.
Okay. Well, hopefully, shortly after January, there won't be too many things to merge, so it's not a long-term thing to solve. That's roughly what I think. But
we'll have more
yeah,
than you think.
yeah,
Just because
yeah.
you're gonna have Kubernetes versions, you're gonna have bug fixes, things
Yes, sir.
like that. So we're gonna have more than we think, but yeah, it won't be a massive number.
Yeah, I was thinking, right now we have the label needs V3 fixed, and I believe that's an old label. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know why we'd have that as anything recent. So I was thinking that we either repurpose it and rename it to needs V3 backport, or just make a new one. What do you think about that?
This was the one that Matt suggested. I don't really care which label it is though. I would agree.
Oh,
that
Matt, you
backport
suggested
would
a
be
backport.
better.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, needs to be V3 fixed because that was just an existing one, I think.
Right. So maybe we can, since we already put a couple of them on, maybe we can repurpose it, because I don't think we need
Sure.
that for any. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, my point was I have been using
now.
this label. I would, if you rename it, make sure it doesn't drop off the existing things that's tagged with, I guess. That would be the
Yeah, we
only.
have to do well.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'll change it now.
Yeah, then we just need to start going through those and creating pull requests that backport those things. Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Great. So are we good with that one? All right, then we're on to Joe. Joe, welcome. This is your first time, right?
Yes, this is my first time.
Well, welcome, Joe, and you're coming with a hip.
At least a draft of one, yes.
All right.
Yeah, so high level here, there's some functionality that I would like to see in Helm, I guess, and I'm open to helping contribute it. I've never done open source before, and I recognize that my use case is very narrow, and the concept around like sequencing of resources is pretty broad, and there's a lot more to it than what I need. So I just for like starters was like looking for like help, collaborating or writing the HIP to make sure it's like workable, so that it could get pull requested and and officially like approved or whatever. Assuming everyone agrees that it's something that should get built. That's pretty much it.
All right. So you want to deal with sequencing. I haven't read it. So when it comes to sequencing the resources, we currently have a default sequencing that we have, and that's kind of been learned. Kubernetes says when you dump a whole bunch of resources up, hey, everything should just reconcile and it'll just work. What we've learned in practice is that isn't always the case. And sometimes you need some ordering to make things work with the way Kubernetes does. Helm, well, when it sends the bulk of its resources up, do it in a single dump. When you're talking about sequencing, are you talking about the ordering for that single dump or multiple dumps where different things at different orders will be put up, wait for it, put the next one up and wait for it? Where are you going with this?
So more of the latter. So like
Okay.
a basic use case here is I have an application that requires a database to exist before I can actually like start the web apps that use the database. Otherwise they'll like fall on their face. And today you have to use either hooks and making sure you weight everything correctly and sequence it such that you could have like a job that runs as a pre-install hook to create your database, and then your web apps can start later. Or you do something where you use like init containers to like endlessly pull for a database until it's ready to go, and then you can start your application. And both of those cases work. But it's not a great development experience, especially the hooks, because like if something fails during development, you get a lot of breadcrumbs left lying around. You got to clean up afterwards because hooks don't clean themselves up. So I kind of was thinking like it'd be really great if Helm had a way to like describe, okay, I want whenever you install this chart, do this first, and then once that's done, do the next thing, and you just sequence those until the entire chart has been deployed. That's kind of the rough idea.
I think the fundamental question that Helm should ask itself here is whether it should try and do like sub-sequencing within a chart or just sequence charts. So if you have a database and then an application, should this just be two charts and then you could sequence those? I'm in favor of this concept in the sense that it makes things much more orderly. A chart is a unit, and we can do the ordering of resources to be deployed within that unit, but then the whole weight thing happens on that unit. The downside of this approach, though, is that Helm today only operates in a single package, so that's up to the user to design something like Helm file or a higher level application it doesn't quite come with the out of the box experience of.
This is a panel.
So, yeah, one of the things to think about here is where does configuration management end and a package manager begin? And if I think about Linux, I think about things like apt, zipper, DNF, things like that. And then you might have, something that sits on top of it. And I keep thinking of old things like Chef and Puppet, but those kinds of things for configuration management where you would do some of this checking. We have to figure out where does package management end and where does configuration management begin, because we don't want to step into that config management space if it's there. Now, I say this as somebody who actually built a tool that did not take off, that added a certain amount of this different package management on top of it, because it was just a different way to look at dependencies. So I'm obviously in favor of these things because I've done it. But it also comes down to lots of architectural questions, right? Like Helm, when it does everything that it does today for dependencies, it is one template sandbox that everything is thrown into, right? When we get into these sequencing charts, does each chart get handled in a different sequence and then has its own templating sandbox and is separate from each other? And so I think there's some questions like this we'll probably want to answer. I already have opinions on them, but I'm raising them so the other maintainers and people here can think about some of this, because I'm not saying my opinions are right, but it's definitely something I'm in favor of. What I think is with this and a couple of the other ones, I'm starting to wonder whether we do charts API version v3 to start adding these things. So that way we have clear definitions around compatibility and features. We don't need to make the call on that yet, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was thinking
you go.
proposal. Oh, sorry. Do you want to go ahead, George?
There you go.
Okay. In short, I was thinking this proposal might make more sense for Helm 4, only because there may, up for discussion, obviously, but like it may require some bigger architectural changes, and we are at that phase for Helm 4. We are not at the major architectural changes for Helm 3. We've passed that. I'm not saying this couldn't be in Helm 3. I just wanted to throw that out there as it may have more flexibility, and so my initial gut instinct is that it may be better for Helm 4.
I was going to say something similar in the sense that I think it's certainly worth writing the thoughts down, and then once we have something to read and something to kind of like marinate on, then we can probably see where the solution might end up. So I do think it's definitely worth like trying to explore the problem space. Yeah, I don't think the comments in the call are going to like come up with a solution in 5 minutes. So yeah, definitely I'd certainly welcome like ideas and things if you're willing to put them down.
Let me ask you this, Joe. What do you need to continue on with this? Because I think the idea sounds palatable to us. So what do you need to help you move forward? Since you're new to contributing to open source, this is getting into this. What can we do to help unblock you?
I guess I just need to know what like obviously what I wrote up is like a draft, and I kind of want to clean it up a little bit before officially like proposing it. But I know you talked about this at KubeCon last week, but I've completely forgotten because it was a very overwhelming week. But what is the bar of how much of the HIP needs to be filled out before I can propose it in a pull request for like actual review? Do I need to like come up with like a design or a proposed design at least and then go from there? Because right now it's just kind of like, here's a problem. I don't know how to fix it, but
So, you know what? Start with what you feel comfortable writing as far as the problem in the idea, and then come back to us, because at least I have opinions on this space. And so you might find somebody who's willing to collaborate with you on the design and architecture once you've got the, your opinion. And I really, before I or somebody else steps in, I'd love to know what your thoughts are on the problem. So that way somebody who already has opinions doesn't steamroll your stuff.
okay.
And so that's the reason I'm not volunteering to jump in very quickly with you on this, is I want to wait and see there. But I think if you start with what you've got and then come back to us, we can help this be refined.
Okay. Sounds good to me. And I'll look at those personas that you posted about and try to incorporate that for clarity's sake.
Thank you.
Can I make one note to you about that, Joe, just as more of an idea? And this might go along with what Matt was saying in terms of collaboration. I know I just mentioned, hey, I know I'm personally very interested in this. It's been a topic. I'm not sure exactly in what way yet. And I know Evan's just mentioned, hey, I'm interested in this too. Matt has opinions too, right? As he said. But one thought I have right now is just in terms of like thinking about it a little bit and prior art. There's kind of two ways of doing sequencing, right? One is dynamic, and one is where you have all of the things you need, and then you try to weight them. You sort of like have your view of, here's my entire universe of resources, and then I have to weight them like 1 to 1,000,000, or however you need to weight them in order to like make up for their normal sequencing, right? And the other is more of a dynamic approach where you specify dependency. I'm personally in favor of this. I know the weights is the former, and that solved a need and had some limitations. And the second is in use in terms of prior art by things like Docker Compose, like Terraform, and in other tools that are out there now other than the cloud native landscape like Flux. They have kind of I think in Terraform and Flux, they call it depends on. And in, I know in Docker Compose, there's also a dependency concept like that, where you just specify each service that's dependent on another resource, right? And the idea of the second one is that it creates kind of a dynamic DAG, where you only have to be concerned about that one resource and what it depends on, and then it creates the org for you. I just wanted to throw those out there as concepts, because when I skimmed over them, I didn't see anything about that in there. You mentioned the weights, but I just wanted to note that.
Yeah, I know we.
So
I was going to say, have a look at Helm file, and then that's what I had. Have a look at Helm file.
Yeah.
My comment on this was on. Sorry, Matt. Just it's a quick one. As you go down that path, as well, mention some examples. Like these are the problems, because then it makes it easier to sort of visualize what the problem we are trying to solve. I saw your HIP, and that was the first comment I was going to make. But yeah.
Sorry, I wrote it really quickly in the airport on the way home.
That's perfectly fine. I love that you're getting involved and new to this. Please hope that we're not overwhelming you with all this stuff. Work on the parts you're comfortable with, then come back and we can help with it.
Sounds good to me.
But I do want to move on in the instance of time, because we're low on time. There's two things I wanted to cover, and I know I'm going to skip over a bunch of things here. First, we shouldn't do a meeting next week because it is U.S. Thanksgiving, and I don't think we're going to have enough people outside of the U.S. to run and hold an effective meeting. Does anybody disagree with that? Is there folks who are outside the U.S. who want to meet next? No? Okay. Then we'll consider that canceled. We normally do cancel that. And the next thing, we do need to pick assignments for the next call. Since there's a decent chance it could be an extended call and be the Helm 4 kickoff, I'd like to volunteer to do that again. All right. Do we have anybody who wants to do notes for that call?
I think I was meant to do notes today and I forgot. I will do notes for next call and not forget.
All right. Issue triage, PR review. Is anybody up for it?
Yeah, me.
Likewise.
All right. All right.
Sorry, I'll be looking at a couple of things.
All right. I'll add some things in here. Add your name in if I missed it. All right. We've got 1 minute left here before we have to go. So I will throw in, Scott, did you want to talk about Helm 4 plugin experiments?
I would, but I know that it's like, I think it just turned top of the hour now.
Okay.
A 10-second version is that I've done some experiments with George and with another fun person from the Lambda company, just because we happened to be on the plane back together, and George and I went to dinner with them all. So yeah, I've got some results from the various like WASM plugin options, Go package, different Go package options, and we've got some other others listed. And so what I'm thinking is just, this isn't 10 seconds, it's more like 40 seconds, but basically to like show the results of each of those little just vanilla experiments. And there's a document with some ideas that's really, really rough right now. I shared with a couple of other Helm teams. I want to share it with everyone. It was just because we were talking about it. So I was like, oh, here's what I was working on. But I want to bring that up at our next meeting where we have all our public notes doc, and kind of when we get it shaped a little bit better.
So what I'll say is I also talked to Matt Butcher about WebAssembly plugins, and there is a pure Go WASM runtime. It's not the fastest because Go is just not the fastest to write them in, but we talked about that and looking at its viability, because doing something that would be a shared object file in the system is kind of a non-starter because so many people won't have it, and we want to make plugins widely and easily acceptable. So if there's a way to do something in pure Go or something we can embed in the Helm and ship, that would be wonderful. All right.
100%.
All right. Yeah, let's save it for next week. But I also have lots of thoughts here. So, but yeah, no time.
All right.
Thank you all.
Some of the things, yeah, thanks everyone. There's some things in here we did not get to. Ingy, I see you've got a bunch of questions. If you can hit
Yes,
us up
I
in
can
Slack,
boil
we
that
can
into
try to ask
one
them.
question. Is there a place where we can chat about things at this group offline?
So there is a Helm dev Slack and Kubernetes Slack that's all about the development of Helm. That's probably a good place to do it. Please directly ping me in there, since I know I'll be all over the place in too many Slack channels, and that will say, hey, Matt, come look at it. But if you want to ask
Okay.
those there,
If it's more targeted to this group, I'll just use that little group I started. I mean, the little.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
That works.
See you guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone, and thanks for going over. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Good holidays. Bye.
Bye.